I think we're live. We're getting live, trying to get live. This new Facebook Live thing is a pain. It still says it. Are we live? I think we're live. Wow. Well, welcome into the AfterSchrock, guys. This new Facebook Composer live video thing is a real pain in the tuchus. So a lot of you last week said, hey, during the AfterSchrock, did you switch cameras or something? As your camera quality is way lower than it used to be. We didn't switch any cameras, guys. What's happening is Facebook is deciding what quality the video will stream at based on whatever internet connection you have. So it's limiting my resolution to 720p, this is a full HD cam. This is a 1080 camera, so it's cutting my resolution. It says that my frame rate's doing good and that I'm fine, so it should be looking great, but there's nothing we can do. It's just like this is their new interface, and it's really not fun to be all pixelated all the time. All right, welcome in, guys. Thanks for joining us for the AfterSchrock today. Appreciate you being here. So yeah, we got some interesting stuff to go over today. I want to ask you a couple questions about the podcast, actually. The new one that we're going to do for Schrock Interactive. We're going to tell you why we're doing a whole different show for that than Compute This, basically. And we don't know if it's going to be an ongoing thing. We're not committing it to being a weekly thing. We don't have an intro jingle. It's literally just going to be like a conversation where we all sit down and talk about what's going on and how, you can navigate through this if you're a business owner in some way. So if that's something that's interesting to you, I would encourage you to go over to facebook.com/Schrock Innovations. And let me put that in here. That's facebook.com/Schrock Interactive. You've already been to Schrock Innovations one because that's where you're at now. But if you go to facebook.com/Schrock Interactive, you can click like and follow. And then that way, when we do go live with it, we don't know what time it is. My staff doesn't even know we're doing it Monday yet. But when I asked for an agenda on last Monday during our meeting, it said, let's put an agenda together. We got the agenda together on Thursday. I'm like, it's go time. What are we waiting for? Businesses are sitting around not figuring this out. I'm getting weekly emails from other business organizations telling me, here are the resources at your disposal that you have available for, because we're really active in organizations like LIBA, like the Omaha Chamber, like the Sarpy Chamber. And they're helping people out. But if you're a small business owner who is not really doing the stuff that, if you're a small business owner that you're not paying the dues to be in the chamber and things like that. If that's you, then the rationale here is, unfortunately, you're not going to have a lot of the information that other businesses have. And I got some news. I'm not going to name competitors or, they're not really. Schrock Interactive started off as a website development house. That's what we did. We build websites for small businesses. But as the world has changed, so has Schrock Interactive. Schrock Interactive is now a kind of a marketing agency almost, because if you build a website, that's great. But if you don't market it, no one's going to come. You don't just put a website up and people just show up. This is one of the things, like Schrock Innovations. People come to Schrock Innovations to transact business, to look at computers, to get free do-it-yourself help. Why do you think the do-it-yourself help is there? It's to bring people in, to get them on the website, to get them to interact with us, to establish us as an authority, to do all the things. That's why Compute This episodes are hosted there, rather than just. That's why I tell you to go to Schrock Innovations rather than just go to Facebook and watch it. Go to Schrock Innovations. If there was a way for us to embed the live video on a Schrock Innovations page rather than sending you to Facebook, we would be doing that. We want people on our website. So the podcast that we're going to do, one of the things I want to ask for today is we haven't named it yet. So I wanted to ask you guys what we should name it, so that if it does become a regular thing that we continuously do, or we do it every month, or however often we decide to do it, that we have a name for it. So name suggestions, looking for those in the comments here today. COVID-19 stuff. This week, we're seeing a little bit of pushback. The news reports are saying that there are several states which are having protests about the lockdowns that are in place. And again, in Nebraska, it probably doesn't make a lot of sense to us. We're like, nobody likes to be restricted in what you can do, or restricted in that, I didn't appreciate standing outside in the cold outside of Shields waiting to get into the store. because they were only letting so many people into the store at a time. You had to wait for someone to come out before they'd let somebody in. Then you get into the store and there's actually more employees in the store than customers. And it was kind of ridiculous, but I get it. Literally, I was there with my wife, and it was cold out, and she didn't bring a coat with her because we didn't think we were going to be standing outside in the cold. We were just going to walk from the car to the door, and so she's kind of huddled up with me because she was cold, and literally the lady's like, "We need everybody to be 6 feet apart," and we're like, we came in the same car, we sleep in the same bed. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a problem if we're less than 6 feet apart. If she's got it, I've got it. If I've got it, she's got it. We both probably already had it. If I'm thinking what I think is true. Um, so yeah, I think we all had it in December actually, or January. Excuse me, in January, and I can go into the details of why I think that later. But I think a lot of people have had it, and the testing is going to confirm that soon. So nobody likes that. I didn't appreciate that, but I understand that she literally just looked at me and she said, "We just got to make it look like everyone's 6 feet apart." So some of this right now is a show. Some of this is, please don't lock us down. We're complying with the 6 foot rule. And look, you can look at our cameras and see that we're complying with the 6 foot rule. Not one of their employees in that store qualified. They were wearing masks, but they were like walking right up on us. And I'm just like, I thought we all had to stay 6 feet apart, but whatever. I'll pick my battles. So anyway, the long and the short of it is that businesses right now are trying to figure out how to get through this. Nobody likes to be locked down. And now we're having protests from people who are like, listen, you can't force us to stay inside our home. There are some states that will ticket you for stepping out of your home. That's thankfully not happening in Nebraska and Iowa, but it is happening in other states, and people don't appreciate it. And so now you're seeing this pushback against it. And the people in the medical arena are saying, hey, if you push back against this stuff and we start having large gatherings again, then we're going to see an exponential rise in cases, and then people will rightfully point at Hall County here in Nebraska and say, look at the Grand Island area, what's happening in Hall County. Yeah, so big headline, Nebraska had a huge increase in the number of cases reported in the state. They were all reported almost exclusively. The majority of them were reported from Hall County. And basically, if what I am hearing is accurate on this, there's a tradition in Latin American cultures where we know Sweet 16. Like the girls will have a Sweet 16 party. Well, in Latin American cultures, they have a quintessa or something. Forgive me, I'm butchering it. Alfonso could correct me and tell me he knows exactly what it is. He was telling me all about it. But it's like Sweet 16, except you do it when you're 15. So they had a party for a girl turning 15, and literally 400 people attended the party. And then suddenly there was an outbreak at the meat packing plant where everybody there pretty much works elbow to elbow, less than 6 feet apart. And then it spread into the community from there. So people who say you're going to see, if you just go back to life as normal and have a large gathering, you're going to see an exponential increase in COVID cases. And they're not wrong. You will. Hall County is proof of that. However, going back to, having a Super Bowl in a stadium is not what anybody is saying right now. So this is one of the things that annoys me. It's kind of a straw man argument. Like we either have to be locked in our homes or we have to go to the Super Bowl. The most hilarious thing. So yesterday I was on Facebook and it pops up that the Nebraska Cornhuskers were live for the red and white game, the spring game. And I'm like, they are? Oh my gosh, how did I not hear about this? And I opened it up and literally it was an EA Sports video game of the spring game. Like they were televising a video game of the spring game with all these legendary names of players and stuff. It was like an all-time spring game or whatever. And there were people in the comments posting how irresponsible it was to be holding a sporting event right now. And how if we don't lock the state down right now, everyone's going to die. And I'm literally like, these people don't know this is a video game. This is a video game. This is not really happening at Memorial Stadium. And if you watch it for more than 30 seconds, you can see it's a video game. I showed it to my wife. She said, that's a video game. I'm like, yes, it's a video game. But the people in the comments are just so rah, that they don't even stop to look. It's just, something is open. We're going to, the outlet mall is going to open. Guys, the last time I went to the outlet mall, I think was with my wife to get something. Now, legitimately, little Louis, his pants are getting kind of high water. He needs some pants. He's growing. and we need to get to Carter's to get him some pants. So we're kind of excited that we'll be able to get pants because Carter's ships things like from the moon apparently because it takes forever to get here. So we're excited to have some pants, but on the same note, I'm not going to go to the outlet mall and don my mask and my gloves. Gloves, really? You see people driving their cars wearing masks and gloves, and you're like, you realize you took everything from the grocery store that you touched and you put it on your steering wheel. And when you go home, you're going to put it on your doorknob and you're going to shut the door and then you're going to take your gloves off. Which hand are you going to take off first? It's like people just don't, gloves don't keep you from spreading coronavirus. Gloves are important for healthcare workers, but I get it. Nebraska Crossing is literally, they're taking some heat and some national attention for being the first shopping mall in America to reopen. And they got to make it, just like Shields, they got to make it look good. So we're going to all wear masks. All the patrons, anyone who comes to the mall has to wear a mask. Anybody who comes to the mall has to wear gloves. I don't know if they're going to provide the gloves and the masks or if you just bandanas or whatever we're wearing. Paper bag. That would be hilarious. Somebody cut out a paper bag and put it on your head and go to the mall. Now you go to the bank wearing a mask and that's desirable. That's what you're supposed to do. So remember the signs on the doors that say no hats, no sunglasses, no Halloween masks, and you're just like, now it's like, please wear a bandana, please wear gloves. You can't do the fingerprint thing right now because, because of coronavirus or whatever. The lobby is closed. The world is completely upside down. And in the middle of this upside down, super crazy, chaotic environment, there are a whole bunch of normal people trying to do normal people things who are getting frustrated, surprised that they can't do normal people things. Yeah. Check it out. I got a haircut. Woo! My wife cut this for me. First haircut she's ever done. She watched a YouTube video and then cut my hair. And she was so nervous. She did such a good job. And she was so nervous. And I'm like, honey, listen, if it goes sideways, we'll just put on a 2-guard and just cut it all off, right? And then I'll style it over to the side a little bit or lay it down with some gel or something and it'll be fine. She's like, no, you got to do the radio show and you're going to be on the camera and you're going to do this, you're going to do that. And I'm just like, no, it's like, cut my hair. So yeah, if my wife is a hairstylist who's licensed, it's a class 5 misdemeanor to cut her husband's hair. Yeah. So, wow. You've got Madonna posting videos of herself in a bathtub. Well, I'll just let you imagine the rest. With her roots growing out. Like she's got a good inch and a half of black, dark hair coming back out. She's not a blonde, apparently. Madonna's not blonde, for real? Meanwhile, the mayor of Chicago gets her hair cut and styled and then takes a selfie with the stylist because she is essential. And Mayor Cuomo gets his hair cut and styled and goes to the gym because he's essential. So on the farm, you see some animals are just more essential than other animals. You get the reference there, guys, the literary reference. So that's what people are getting ticked about right now. It's like you can only keep people in their homes for so long before you start to have some pushback. And so there's going to be pushback. Now, Nebraska has been, the governor of Nebraska, the governor of Iowa have done a pretty good job of allowing people to get out enough that they're not going completely stir crazy. And on the other hand, there's an eye toward this reopening. So everything we're talking about now is reopening. Guys, at the beginning of this, it was like, okay, we're going to have a V-shaped recovery. Excuse me. It's not corona. It's spit. Sorry. We're going to have this V-shaped recovery. We're going to have businesses that are going to reopen, and there's going to be such a pent-up surge of demand from people who haven't been able to go out of their house. No one's going to want to cook at home. Everybody's going to go out to eat. Everything's going to be busy, packed, full, the whole bit. That's not what's happening in China right now. There are restaurant owners in China who are just ruined because now that people have been eating at home for 2 months, and this is in Wuhan restaurants, nobody wants to eat at the restaurants in Wuhan because people know the food that they make at home is safe. Don't know about the restaurant. We assume it's safe. The restaurant you think would make it safe, but we all know they're under some financial strain right now, so maybe some corners were cut. The restaurant owner in Wuhan said, People used to go out for lunch when they were working, and now they all bought lunch boxes. So literally, there's going to be some changes in consumer behavior patterns from this. Things are going to be different than they were before. Did you know that AMC Theaters is on the verge of bankruptcy? There are landlords that where they rent their theaters are demanding their rent be paid, and AMC has just told them we're not going to be paying you rent while we are closed. Sorry, it's not going to happen. They also said though when they reopen, when things go back to normal, when they reopen, they will pay everything that was owed. Just you're going to have to hold off until things reopen. But here's the problem. So we're talking about maybe reopening the state of Nebraska in a month here, or no, 18, 17 days, something like that. When we reopen it, that's going to be 10 people. Right now, it's no gatherings of 10 people or more. They might go back up to 20 people or more. So that means you can have 20 people in a movie theater. How do you stay 6 feet distant from the person next to you in the movie theater seat? That means every third seat could be used. So you can't sit next to your husband or wife at the movie theater, just like Shields, because we need it to look good. We need to make sure we are enforcing social distancing. That's why we can only sell every third seat. So we're going to lose 2/3 of the capacity of our theater seating. What studio is going to want to release a movie in an environment where 2/3 of box office seats are not available? It's not going to go back to normal anytime soon. Here's the other thing. This occurred to me. Everyone's been talking about there's going to be a vaccine eventually. And once we have the vaccine, then we can go back to normal. Do you know why there's not a vaccine for the common cold? There's not a vaccine for the common cold because RNA strands, viruses, do not go inside your cells. So I learned a little. I read a couple articles on the internet, and now I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night, and I am an expert on RNA cellular infection. Okay, so from what I read, I'm not an expert, by the way, just in case you didn't catch the sarcasm there. From what I read, though, when you get like the flu actually infects your cells. It gets inside your cells and multiplies in there, and your fighter T cells can come out in response and attack and kill off the infected cells in your body, eliminating the flu virus, right? Or the flu infection. Well, the cold virus never goes inside your cells. It's a strand of RNA that sits on top of the cells and uses the cell's mechanics to reproduce the virus, which then attaches to other cells. There is no fighter T cell response. There's no immune system response that necessarily, it doesn't activate. I don't understand the details, but it doesn't activate in the same way that it does for other infections like the flu. So we can have a flu vaccine because there is an effective way to combat the flu. There currently is no way in existence to create a vaccine for an RNA strand. Doesn't exist. So they're not trying to create a new flu vaccine because they make a new flu vaccine every year, right? That's no big deal. We'll just make one for COVID and it'll be good. It is a big deal because COVID is different than the flu. And there has never in all of human existence been any inoculation that can stop a COVID-like cold infection. It's an upper respiratory infection. You can't stop it with a vaccine. So not only are they trying to develop a vaccine that stops this specific COVID infection, they're trying to develop the first ever vaccine ever created for the common cold. I'm not saying COVID-19 is the common cold. You get what I'm saying. I'm saying it's a similar classification of infection. So there's not going to be a vaccine, guys. It's not going to happen. It's a pipe dream. So if you're buying biomed stocks right now from companies that say they have a vaccine, there's a long list of vaccines that are in trials right now. Some of them are killing the test patients. Some of them are killing animals. Nope, they're trying to find. Now, if somebody does make a vaccine, it's going to be a major scientific breakthrough. The company that discovers that is going to be like, woo, straight up. You just cured the common cold, my man. Amazing. But the likelihood of that happening is very low. Much more likely is we're going to have some kind of a treatment like remdesivir. So remdesivir is showing promise in studies. People are getting excited about it. The company that makes it, Gilead, I think, is saying, tamping it down. They're scientists. They're saying this is not a full study. This isn't even a properly randomized study. So we're going to have to do more studies after this. This is just the preliminary results. So it makes it kind of weird that in Wuhan, so they were running the tests, they were running a study, two studies in China, and then they were running studies in America too. The reason they do that is the two different genomes, the Asian genome and the European genome, respond differently to COVID. Now they both get sick. The ACE2 receptors are both impacted in both genomes, but people of Asian descent have more ACE2 receptors than people of European descent. So it's important for Gilead, if they're making a treatment that could be applied worldwide, which is what you're going to need to have, some kind of a treatment for this, that they test it in an Asian population and they test it in an American population. To test this thing, they need people infected with COVID that are on death's doorstep. Where can you find those people? You can find them in Wuhan and you can find them in New York. So that's where the tests are happening, East Coast and Wuhan. Except China canceled both studies that Gilead was running in Wuhan, citing the fact there were no patients available for the studies. No one was sick enough to be studied. So I guess your study is canceled. I thought that was interesting when I saw that story. They canceled one, citing no available patients. And there was another one running in a different city in China. They canceled that one too, again, citing no available patients. But at the same time, they're talking about having to impose new lockdowns in other areas because foreign Chinese nationals coming back from other countries are bringing modified genetic modifications of the COVID virus back with them and reinfecting. You're seeing a second wave now in China. But there's no one to study, you see. It doesn't add up. So I thought, oh, that's weird. Then it turns around, they released that, hey, it's actually starting to work. And there's a couple stories that were circulated in mainstream media last week, which I was shocked to see, that said, wow, this thing probably really did. U.S. Intel is saying it came out of the biolab in Wuhan. So you heard it here 2 months ago first. It's kind of weird that this thing hit a wet market that was 2 miles from a level 4 biolab, isn't it? I'm not saying it came from the biolab, but a reasonable person could say, let's say you were studying bat-based coronaviruses in a viral lab a few miles from a wet market. And somehow a bat-based coronavirus that's novel, that no one has ever seen before, started to spread in the wet market and then went worldwide. I'm not saying it's a bioweapon. I'm not saying it's craziness. I'm saying it was an accident. Oh, wow, look at that. The safety record of that particular biolab is so bad that the United States is giving them $13 million a year just so that they can buy the right equipment to make sure that if you're going to do this, China, please just do it right. So we're giving them money, begging them to please just be careful. And their safety record says they're not careful. Now we're starting to see that this was probably happening in November in China, and they knew about it in November, and they just kept it quiet. So now if you look at the totality of all of China's actions, there was an article in the mainstream media that said, did China purposefully infect the world? That's a claim. That's a huge claim. But when you think about it from a communist perspective, China knew that they had a virus that was going to hobble their economy. They knew that the only way that they were going to quarantine this thing was to quarantine the people, which means stopping the economy cold. You close China's economy for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, whatever it is, and the rest of to stop the infection from spreading, in effect, you'll be protecting the rest of the world as well. And the rest of the world will not have to shut their economies as a result of early action from China. But it will put China at an economic disadvantage. Well, from a communist perspective, it's not a stretch to say, maybe we let this thing spread because we're going to get it bad in China anyway. Maybe it's more important that China doesn't suffer alone. If that is true, I don't know how anyone's going to prove it or who's going to believe it or how China's going to deal with it. But guys, the entire structure of globalism is cracking. And that sounds like big lofty stuff, like the new world order is cracking, No, but globalism is cracking. So in other words, right now, in Japan, they have their own wonder drug. Abe has his own wonder drug. It's not hydrochloroquine or whatever. It's some other drug, and they've started to hoard the materials to produce the drug, but they can't get anyone in China to make the drug for them because China's busy making drugs for their own people. And they said, sorry, we don't have any capacity. And Japan is like, well, we don't have the capability to manufacture this on our own. They're trying to get Fujifilm to make it. So it's like that's the underpinning of globalism, that you can outsource your manufacturing to areas with lower labor costs to get cheaper goods. That defeats inflation, allowing you to print a bunch of money. So when you crack globalism and all of a sudden you start bringing these factories back home, you're not going to be able to have the same product made at the same price in America or Japan or any other country as it's being made in these cheaper factories. That's going to necessarily cause the prices to go up. And then you're printing all this extra money. The prices are going to necessarily go up. All the rules are changing, guys. From a business perspective, this is going to change everything. Now, it's not that globalism is dead. It's just cracked. There are certain areas now that the government's going to come back and say, it's important that we manufacture our own pharmaceuticals. There are like 20-something drugs that are in extreme shortage right now because we just can't get them. We don't make them, and we can't get them. So what do you do when you can't get medication that keeps people alive? Whose fault is that? Well, politicians are going to start to say, well, it's important that we subsidize some kind of pharmaceutical plant here in America to make the things that don't make financial sense to make here, like antibiotics. We don't make any of them in America, hardly, because they're super cheap. It's a $4 Walmart prescription, right? And you can't make money at it. So you make it in a cheap place. But what if you can't trust the cheap place anymore? What if the cheap place purposefully, potentially spread a pandemic around the world so they wouldn't suffer alone? Is that really who you want to trust the lives of your citizens to? If that is true and that gets out and becomes like a political football in an election year, yeah, it's going to be bad. So from a business owner, that's one of the reasons we want to do the podcast. From a business owner's perspective, how do you navigate this? Because small businesses are, I hate to say it, but when I started Schrock 21 years ago, the internet was kind of a new thing, and so it was only like 4 or 5 years old. It hadn't changed everything. You needed a website, kind of. It was a cool thing to have, but no one really bought anything on the internet. It was more like an online brochure about your products and services, basically. And then you put out your shingle. I literally had a wooden sign that was burnt that we had made in Branson when we went down there for our honeymoon, hung it outside the shop, and we opened a store, right? But you can't really do that anymore. It is the world is so different now. You have to have an online presence. You have to have a dominant online presence. And starting a new online presence, it used to be when you're launching a product or a service, you're looking at the competition. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How can I craft my product or my service offering so that it meets demands that are unique, that does something different, that I have a competitive advantage? Well, now you don't necessarily need a competitive advantage anymore. I call it the network news model. If you were the network newscast in the 80s, you didn't have to have a better newscast than anybody else because you were one of 3 options that was piped into your home. You had 2 other competitors, and that was it. And you were all competing on the margins for this little audience. Then the internet blew that whole model up. And now you can be an alternative blogger out there, and as long as you're getting the stories right, you can be just as trusted as CNN or Fox News or MSNBC. They're all the same as a blogger. Literally, that's the trust levels are at. So businesses haven't figured that out yet. That if you, I bought a new truck. I needed something that would pull something heavier. So I got a new truck. And it's got a walnut for a gas tank. I mean, literally, like it's got a 30-gallon gas tank or 35-gallon tank. And I'm like, no, I want like I'm pulling stuff. I'm going long distances. I want like a 60-gallon tank, or I want the biggest tank I can get. And so now I'm like, okay, what truck shop should I call to have an aftermarket tank put on my F350? What should I have done? I do a Google search, right? So now you could be the best aftermarket fuel tank installer in the world. You could have reviews just glowing reviews, loyal customer base, happy customers, do the job for half the price as everybody else. But if your web presence doesn't put you in the top 3 results of my search, I will never even know you exist. Word of mouth is almost, I mean, it's still there. We get customers from word of mouth. Word of mouth travels very slowly. Online advertising travels instantly. And right now, businesses are not spending, they're deferring their radio budgets and their TV budgets. And I get that because there's no way you can't advertise a product or service right now that you can sell. So that makes sense. But it does not make sense in the web world. You still have to create content. You have people sitting on their butts at home. Have them write a how-to or do a quick video or do a quarantine podcast series, for example. Create some content, put it on your site, monetize the content if you want to. Otherwise, the content should be there to promote your business and position you as an authority in the industry. Right now, people are all sitting at home looking for stuff to do. Give them something unique and different and interesting to look at. Tiger King. In what world did Tiger King ever have a shot at becoming a national phenomenon? The rules are all changing. So yeah, so we need a name for our new podcast. The COVID thing also. So I'm going to go through the comments in just a second. We just need a name for the podcast. I'm looking for suggestions. It's a business-focused podcast by Schrock Interactive. We can't call it Compute This. We can't call it After Schrock. And I'm looking for a name that we can use now that we could also continue using in the forward. So I don't want to call it like the Quarantine Diaries or any. Well, Madonna's doing that. Hold on. I don't want to call it, the COVID crisis podcast or anything, crazy. But here's the thing. There's a couple stories that I saw that are some really good news things. Good news. They tested outside of a Massachusetts hospital where they are in the middle of a hotspot. They tested 200 random people walking by on the street. It was a pinprick test, and they took a drop of blood, and they tested it for COVID antibodies. So what this means is you've already had COVID, you've already recovered from it, your body has learned how to fight it, and as a result, you may or may not have some degree of immunity to it. Usually, like colds and things like that, you get a limited immunity. They were talking about the H1N1 virus. Why didn't that hit people over 60 the way COVID is? The reason is because people over 60 are older. They've been exposed to more viruses throughout their lifetime. And H1N1 must have been very similar to some other flu virus that people 60 years or older had been exposed to. Therefore, their body had some idea on kind of sort of how to fight that thing. The difference with COVID is nobody has any idea. It's brand new. It's novel. That's why they call it the novel coronavirus. It's new. Nobody has anything in their bodies that tells them how to fight it. But yet, they tested 200 random people in Massachusetts, and 1/3 of them had antibodies. 1/3 of the population in that test. Granted, it was 200 people in the middle of a hotspot. Okay, if you tested Omaha, it probably would be less. But I'm just saying, in the middle of a hotspot, 1/3 of the people in the city already had it, already got over it, and probably have some level of immunity conferred due to that. Why are those people locked down? Now, the only way you're going to be able to enforce this is by putting together a project which Google and Apple are working on right now. That project, they're building an API, an application programming interface that allows Apple phones and Google phones to talk to each other. Before you get too excited, this doesn't mean if you send a text to someone using an Apple phone, it'll say read next to their text when they read it. That would be handy and useful. But no, it's not going to do that. This does not mean that you could FaceTime people from your Android device to their Apple phone, because that would be handy and useful in a pandemic. But no, it does not mean that. What it means is the two phones can share data between them about Bluetooth proximity. So if you get within a certain distance of somebody else carrying a smartphone, it will create a log in the phone that the two of you had proximity. And then if this person, so you go to a Walmart and you do your shopping and you go home, and 2 weeks later you get a phone call that says, 2 weeks ago, you were proximate to someone at the Walmart that then tested positive for COVID-19. Therefore, we need you to quarantine for 2 weeks. There's no test that says you have it. There's no reason other than the fact that your phone said you were this far away from another person. That's kind of scary, right? Because Bluetooth is not, anyone who's had Bluetooth headphones knows the accepted range is 15 feet, but you can go 30 feet sometimes before the audio gets bad. And sometimes you can have really cheap headphones, you can't go 3 feet and the audio is terrible. So the long and the short of it, guys, is this is super scary. Now, of course, you have to download the app and opt into the program. The phones will collect the data automatically, but it'll only identify you if you install an app on your phone from county health department or whatever else so that you can be tracked. So, of course, if you value your privacy, just don't install the app and you'll be fine. Problem with that is, what if places start requiring you to have like an immunity certificate to go out? What if you have to prove you're the member of the 1/3 of Massachusetts that's already had this and recovered from it? The only way you're going to do that is with your phone, and the only way you're going to do that is by installing the app. And so this is weird. It's weird because you've got medical science saying this is the best way to stop the spread. You have an economy that is literally being destroyed. It's literally consuming itself right now. And over here, you have the freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. And the three things all have different priorities. This over here, the medical people say we have to save lives, and we want to save as many lives as we can. So stay home. It could be this person you're protecting. The economy says business owners are saying I'm going to fire all my employees. They won't have jobs. So sorry, we're gone. Well, we don't want that. And then over here, there's freedoms guaranteed by the Constitution. You can't lock people in their homes. You just can't do it. It's illegal. How do we navigate that? So there's going to be lawsuits after this, lots of lawsuits. So be wary of watching those phone apps when they come out to install on your phone to track COVID-19 or do contact tracing. There's going to be a huge propaganda campaign behind it about how this is what needs to happen to get us all back to work. And they may be right. That may be what needs to happen. The problem is you're surrender. Basically, if you put yourself into that app and you're not one of the 2/3 or 1/3 of people that have been exposed to it, and then you're within 15 feet at any point, at any day, you're within 15 feet of somebody else that comes back positive, you're basically in a jail cell for 2 weeks while they wait to see if you get it. You still are not a member of the 1/3 because the longer we keep people locked down, the fewer people will have antibodies. So it's a two-edged sword. So anyway, I take that as good news. Another thing out of Massachusetts is in Boston, they tested the entire population of a homeless shelter. I love that we can't get tests for other people, but we can test all the homeless. You see, so they tested the homeless people. Okay, whatever. They tested them, and guess what? Every single person in the homeless shelter was currently infected with COVID-19. And every single person in the homeless shelter had zero symptoms. So we knew that COVID-19 could be asymptomatic, right? We know that you could have it and not even know you had it. We call those people super spreaders. They're evil super spreaders. But here's the thing. What if you could just have COVID-19, not have symptoms, and get over it? What if that's actually the norm? What if 95% of the time that's what happens? That's what we're going to start seeing in the antibody testing. That's why I'm super excited. I've literally called my doctor. I'm like, the second there's antibody testing available, let me know. I am absolutely convinced that myself, my staff, and my entire family had this in late December, early January. I am convinced that we had it already. And I want to know. I just want to give me a test. Let me know if I'm one of the chosen few, if you will. All right, let's take a look at these comments here. All right, good to see you, Mark. Thanks for watching from Grand Island there. All right. Yeah, Grand Island. It's scary watching what's happening out there in Hall County right now, isn't it? With all the people, with it spreading the way it's spreading and exponentially going like that. That's exactly what you want to avoid, which is why we should not have large gatherings right now. We shouldn't have gatherings of 20 or 25 people or more. Bill found us. Yay. Came on easy on my end. That's good. All right. Good morning, Janet. Good to see you here. Hello, Alan from Sioux City. Thanks for joining us. Good to have you back, Dawn. Carolyn. Nancy's still here from Phoenix. Manhattan, Kansas. Wow, we're making the rounds. All right. Oh, cool. Sport Clips is here. So you guys know exactly what we're talking about. I mean, the Sport Clips is my go-to. That's where I get my hair cut, right? So my wife had to cut my hair, and you know what she said? And I don't get it cut in Elkhorn one. It was there's one right next door to our papillion shop that I use, but she said I give these girls a hard time because some of them are really good, and some of them can't seem to cut a straight line to save their lives. And they don't usually last very long when they're that way, but. But I come home, my wife's like, "Can't those girls cut a straight line?" And now she's like taking everything back she's ever said. She's like, "Oh, I used to give them such a hard time. I'm going to do so much nicer from now on." She's cutting across the back of my neck. I'm like, oh, "Okay, you went over the same spot 14 times. It's starting to hurt." Yes, Lou is wearing pants that are three size small for him, my son. So yeah, we need to get into Carter's. Yeah, Bob, that video, Tommy Frazier was the quarterback, and they were like, literally, it was like the all star put together of the. That was '95 was when he was quarterback last, I believe. Schrock Webwise, well, that's not a bad name, Blake. Buzz cuts are back. Yes, they are. There's a meme going around on Facebook of all the different kinds of haircuts, and they have names under them. It's hilarious. Okay, Mark, I told Kim that Mark says, have Kim do your next haircut on the AfterSchrock. And I told Kim, I was like, we need to film this. We need to film you cutting my hair. And she was like, that's stupid. And no, blah, 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 blah. And I said, no, it's going to be hilarious. She goes, well, what if I screw up? I'm like, that's why it'll be hilarious. If you screw up, this is going to be priceless content, right? And yeah, she didn't want to do it. So anyway, you can blame her for that one. I did think of that. I said, we got to film it. If there is a cure for the common cold and COVID, then they're very likely to have a cure for herpes too. We can always hope, I suppose. All right. Maybe we should going forward rely on ourselves and make American. You know, Kathy, that's an excellent idea. And again, okay, for example, right now we want to have card readers made. Those are the things that in the front of the computer where you can slide your memory cards in. Because right now, if we buy them, the markup in the general market, they cost about $10 a piece, right? To have them manufactured costs about $2 a piece. So we can save $8 a card reader if we make 1,000 of them at a time. The only factories in existence that make card readers right now are in China. There isn't one in the Philippines. I looked. There isn't one in Vietnam. I looked. There isn't one in America. I looked. The next thought that occurs to me is, how hard is it to set up a factory? And then my wife is going to look at me like, she looked at me and she said, no, no. And I'm like, yeah, she's like, you're not Henry Ford. I'm like, well, we could set up a factory in America and employ Americans to make card readers. And I start doing the back of the envelope math and I figure out that we'd have to charge $20 a card reader because we have union laws and they would all unionize. And we have taxes that are ridiculous. So could we even put it in Nebraska? Would we have to go to South Dakota instead, where there's no income tax? Well, that's a significant concern. So literally everything, guys, like states are going to be broke. Some states are going to raise their taxes, like Illinois is probably going to raise a whole bunch of new taxes to try to cover their budget deficit. And some states, like Texas probably, are going to lower their taxes so that there's that giant sucking sound you hear is anybody with money moving to those states like Texas and Florida. If Nebraska is smart about this, they will cut their budget deep. We're talking bone red deep to the point where people are like, you can't cut that, but we have to cut that. And then they will lower all the taxes, all the property. They will eliminate the business taxes entirely. And then they will lower the personal taxes. Because you see, what people don't seem to understand is that businesses don't pay taxes. People pay taxes. You as a consumer pay my business tax, and me as a person pay my own income tax from the business. So people pay taxes. Businesses don't. Then you can make yourself feel better and say, well, that's a business tax and the business has to pay that. The business passes the cost on. So in other words, if I have to pay $20 extra to build a card reader in America, that causes the price of my goods to go up. Now, a computer consists of let's see, there's a motherboard, there's a processor, there's memory, there's a hard drive, there's a case, there's a card reader and a DVD drive and a Wi-Fi card. So there, in a normal mid-range computer, there are 8 parts. If each of those 8 parts suddenly cost $20 more to make, are you really comfortable, 20, 40, 60, 81, 20, 40, 60, are you comfortable paying $160 more for your computer so you can have one that was completely manufactured in America? I understand the visceral gut reaction to that is yes. Yes, I would. But I also, as a business owner, know that if you put my computer at $160, if we take a computer that is right now $700 and say now it's $860, and you put a Dell next to that made in China that has the exact same specifications but is $160 cheaper, you know that 90% of the American population is going to buy the Dell at Walmart. That's what they're going to do. And my business will fail. So that's the quandary of globalism. You can't bring these industries back unless you're going to subsidize them or exempt them from unionization or exempt them from taxation or all of the above. Because we pay, in China, the average, not the factory worker, because they make less, but like one of our sales reps at one of the factories in China that we would deal with when we're trying to have a product made makes about $300 a month. And they're considered rich in China. They're doing well. $300 a month. There's no American worker that can work for that. Especially if you're a mainline assembly, they're not valued more in China, they're valued less. The manual labor is valued less. You don't get paid $30 or $40 an hour to work on an assembly line at a cereal factory or to drive a truck for UPS. You just don't. And if you want to get paid that much, fine, we'll find somebody else. You can't do that in America for a lot of different reasons. And I'm not sure we want to go to a place where we can do that. But on the other hand, the alternative is to say that these things are made overseas. So I think there's going to be some industries that are going to be mandated to be domestic, and they're going to be subsidized. But wow, if there was a state right now that said, you want to open a factory up in our state that will make computer components, and here's the capital we partnered with this bank. They're going to do all the loans. They're going to get you all the capital you need to build your factory. You can hire our local people. You'll have to pay prevailing wage, which is what it is, but you're not going to get taxed on it, and we're going to exempt you from unionization on the condition that you provide medical insurance and a retirement plan and all the normal benefits that people expect. That could work. That's what we're going to probably end up doing with pharmaceuticals and stuff like that. But I'm not sure that you can't subsidize every industry. You just can't. And so I don't know that we're ever going to make computers in America again, unless there's a war and we literally can't make them in China. If the normal changes, and then we can't. One of the things helping prevent wars is globalization. So you get rid of globalization, and all of a sudden you have a higher likelihood of a war because everything is not economically interconnected anymore. If we don't need a country and they don't need us, and there's an escalation in the South China Sea, for example, over Taiwan, well, maybe people launch missiles a little sooner than they would have otherwise. So it's a very complex game that I'm in no way qualified to play. So we just try to take I don't have a factory. I have to deal with the factories that exist, and all the factories that exist are in China. So until somebody opens a factory in the U.S., I would definitely ask for a quote. I would not be hopeful that they're going to produce my goods for $2 a piece. I just don't think it would happen. All right. Let's see. Remember CompuServe? I do remember CompuServe. All right. Are you thinking of manufacturing computer components? Are you looking for investors for a company? Wow. How long ago was this typed? Because I did not see this comment before I just said all that. Honestly, Richard, am I looking for investors to manufacture computer components? I don't know that business yet. I've looked into it on cursory levels, as I could just discussed. My wife is like, no more business. You have too many businesses, no more businesses. But there's a demand for it. The challenge would be making it at an affordable price. And I think the only way you're going to make it at an affordable price is through automation. And like I said during the radio show, guys, that's where this is going. The weak link in the entire coronavirus story right now is the people, the employees, the customers, everybody. That's the weak link. So we can do contactless delivery, we can do all these other things, but we can't run the meat packing plant without people working elbow to elbow. But the cost of buying machinery to automate what those people do is so expensive that it's just cheaper for us to have the people. And that's what we've always done. That's what we know. Well, now you're closed down and they're talking about shortages of bacon. That's where I draw the line. Riots in the streets. There's no bacon. But what about automation there? Why do we need humans cutting meat? Can't a machine do that? And the answer is probably, but the cost of getting a machine, having a machine made to do that. So it's not just starting a manufacturing facility, it's designing the machines to put in the manufacturing facility that will replace the line workers, which again isn't really a popular thing to talk about on a regular radio show, which is why we need a business focused radio show to talk about the business realities that that you get roasted for if you talk about in public. It's just people are expensive. And if you can automate, you need fewer people. Well, people need jobs. That's true. They do need jobs. But this has been the conversation going back for decades. So the VCR was going to put the movie theater out of business. And the Xerox machine was going to destroy book publishers, because why would you buy the book when you could just Xerox a copy? Have you ever looked at something from a book photocopied? It's not fun to read. Or, just going forward, and eventually now we're at that point where maybe some of these things are more legitimate than they were back in the day, but people, the MP3, oh my gosh, digital music was going to destroy the music industry. And the music industry still exists. It's just radically different than it was before. So there's a term for this in business, and it's called creative destruction. The entire American economy is built on creative destruction. So the buggy whip makers are put out of business by the automobile manufacturers. And the automobile manufacturers are challenged by the ride-sharing companies. And the oil industry is challenged by the electric industry. And it's just this creative destruction. What worked for the last decade may not work next decade. So we're going to have to get creative. And when we come up with a new solution, like an automated teller machine that can spit out money and do deposits and withdrawals for you automatically, we're going to put bank tellers out of jobs. Or the automated checkouts at the grocery store. Well, those cashiers aren't going to have jobs. And it's like, that's true. There are fewer cashiers in a grocery store now. There are fewer tellers at a bank now. But there are other jobs that have opened up as a result of that. And so you're not going to build an economy on bank tellers and grocery store cashiers. You need those high-tech skill sets, and the only way you get those is to work with machinery and then figure out a better way to make a better machine. So the thing is, this all sounds well and good, except people have tried this. Elon Musk, the maker of the Tesla cars, was going to make a gigafactory, and it was going to be like, he called it the Dreadnought, because it was completely automated. The machine building the machine. It was amazing, right? And he bought like millions of dollars of high-tech German assembly machines and things, and spent like 2 years trying to get it all to work. But then finally, they couldn't make a Tesla with it. After 2 years, they still couldn't make a Tesla. And so finally, the investors were like, you got to produce cars or we're going to bail. And so then he went through that production hell period where all the humans came in and they were working at weird angles and they were having repetitive motion injuries. And it was a poorly constructed assembly line because it was designed for a machine, but the machines didn't work, so they had to have humans instead. It's a really challenging thing to completely automate production like that. Could it be done? Yeah. Would it take a lot of money? Yeah. Will a first mover who does it and does it right make a lot of money? Possibly. Because what happens when China steals the plants for the machine and puts the machines in China? And their cost of electricity is cheaper. Their cost to run the machine is cheaper. So you see how you go back to the same thing. So the problem that I'm worried about right now, there are businesses that are going to be coming back to America over this. When that happens, prices are going to go up. We're going to see inflation, guys. And people on fixed incomes, inflation is like the enemy. And everyone will say, we've had inflation. Food inflation has been here. Fuel inflation has been here. But now I'm talking about inflation in everyday goods. We take it for granted. You can always buy a new phone or a new iPad or a new computer that has more processing power than the last one you had at a price that is the same or lower than you paid for the last one you got. That's like normal, right? But what I'm saying is, if things come back to America, that's not normal anymore. The price of the computer every year is going to go up. And then they'll be saying, but this one does so much more than your last one does. Doesn't it make sense that you would pay more for a more capable machine? So you see how that's kind of challenging. But yeah, I mean, Richard, I'm always up for business ideas and business thoughts. Um, I may not have all the pieces of the puzzle, but if you want to drop 10 or 20 million on me so I can build a factory, I will find a way to make that happen. All right, not having phones 20 years ago is similar to not having an online presence now. Yeah, same thing. Oh yeah, the phone book. That lovely Kimberly saying we had a phone book dropped off yesterday. Our teenager looked at it and said, "Seems inefficient." It was this thick, and that included the yellow pages. You can't even use them for booster seats anymore. Pod Innovations. That sounds like a seed company, though, Keith. I don't know. Pod Talk. Pod Talk. Maybe Pod Talk. I don't know. We'll see. Schrock Talk. It doesn't say business though. That's the thing. Business Solutions by Schrock Innovations. Okay. Schrock Talk. Nancy says Keith beat me. Richard's name is too long. Keith fighting back. More from Thor, but it's not just Thor. That's the thing. It's like a whole team of people. Because here's the thing. I get on here and I do this because I know what stories are going to go well on the air. I know which headlines are gonna make people listen through a break. And during the AfterSchrock, I try to keep it on the rails a little bit. Okay, a little bit. This is completely different. So this is me saying, here's a challenge that I see. Let's say that we were approached by a business suffering from this challenge. How would we handle that team go? And Alfonso would talk about how important it is to have an online presence that sells everything in your business, whether it's a product or a service. How does a haircut salon sell a color on their website? Well, you put your booking on the website and you make people prepay for the appointment. Done. Give them a discount for setting up an automatically recurring subscription for haircuts. Automatically book their appointment. Send them a text message when their next haircut is. If they need to change it, they can log in and change it. All of a sudden, that person up front doesn't need to be there anymore to take the calls and schedule the appointments. Or you don't need two of them. You can just do one. So, but you see that this is the thing. This is the problem that we deal with between Schrock Innovations and Schrock Interactive. Schrock Innovations is a consumer company. Consumers spend the money that they earn at their jobs to buy products from us. Schrock Interactive is in the business of helping businesses be more efficient through automation and artificial intelligence, which means there are fewer jobs at those businesses, which means fewer people have, which means they have to go find jobs somewhere else. So the two messages kind of butt. You see how they don't mesh well together, but they're both legitimate businesses with legitimate aims. The thing that we've been banging our head against the wall for a year is, okay, this is state government. If Thor was dictator Kim Thor-un, and I could come in and do anything we wanted with the state of Nebraska government, the first thing I would do is I would take every stupid form that you have to go in and put a wet signature on, everything, all these temporary things that we've changed to make it contactless so you don't have to go do business with the government. Those should be permanent. And all the people that process all that paperwork should be let go. The state can't afford them. The state is not an employer. The state is taking money from you, from your pocket, from your bank account, and giving it to people who are pushing paperwork for the state. Those people are unionized, though, you see. You can't just fire them. But the problem is, with the modern technology, we're talking about automating common office procedures. Every business right now that is going to survive this COVID thing has already done that. I'm watching orders come in for products during the radio show. Credit cards were collected, products were processed, products were delivered, orders have been put into queue for production. When my guys come in this morning, they'll take things off the shelf, put it in the transfer areas. Monday, those things go out, customers get their computers. I mean, it's automated to the extent eventually a person gets involved, but 99% of it's automated. That's what we need to do because the state's not going to have money to do anything different. unless they want to raise taxes, unless they want to take more money from your pocket to pay for the government it's not even government, to pay for the people to push the papers that we don't need to push because we don't need the paper. Does this make sense? Like, we came up with a plan. So Schrock Interactive, there was a bid from the state of Nebraska, a specific department in the state, that was approving in the city of not state of Nebraska, excuse me, the city of Lincoln, that was approving permits. So like if you're an HVAC contractor, if you fix air conditioners, you have to go do your continuing education, and then you have to get recertified or relicensed every year to be an electrician or to be an HVAC contractor or to be a plumber. And so they wanted a new system to process that so that people could pay online, right? They could handle their thing online, and it should automatically renew and automatically charge their cards. But their system, so what they wanted, what they were asking for, was an automated credit card machine. So in other words, in order to get your license done, you had to go out and do all the continuing education. You had to do all these specific things, and then you had to bring that all into the office and show that to a person. And then they'd say, stamp, stamp, stamp. They'd take your check, and you'd be renewed. They wanted to put that all online so that people could submit all their paperwork through the website, and then they could print it out in the office and go stamp, 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 and then click the approved button. And we came in with our quote and said, that's stupid, because we can programmatically check all of this online. We don't need a human to even look at it. Well, someone's got to process it. No, nobody has to process it. It would be processed perfectly with zero errors. Your requirement for your project said you do not want anyone for any reason coming into the office, but yet you insist that there has to be somebody stationed at the window in the office. But if you don't allow anyone to come to the office, why do you need that person sitting there? Well, that person's always sat there. So literally, it was a lesson for me. And it's why we don't bid on government jobs right now. It's a waste of time. Because when we come in there, we're in there to automate, we're in there to make it efficient, we're in there to make it perfect, and we're there to do it right the first time. And that's not what the government wants us to do. So we have clients, we have businesses that we do that for, that are willing to pay us to do that. Why would I waste my time spending 20 man hours putting a proposal together for an agency to go into a competitive bidding process where all of a sudden the 12 people sitting around the table will look at me and realize that 3/4 of them won't have a job if they accept my project. So my project didn't get accepted. I don't know if they accepted anyone's project, but the problem was the way that we structured our project and the way they structured their bid, they couldn't refuse our project. So they no-bid the entire contract. They didn't give it to anybody, and then they resubmitted it with the new requirements that boxed us out of the bidding. So there you go. That's your city government and work in Lincoln. So yeah, it's fun time. So I don't know if I want to start a factory first. I think we could do a lot just automating other people's stuff before we build our own stuff. All right, Kimberly's Tech Talk and Style. That's right. Woo, Kimberly. Oh, fewer words the better, easier to remember. Hey Cheryl, thanks for joining us from Council Bluffs. Tracy in Southwest Iowa, good to have you. Des Moines Service Center, they've got the whole place cleaned out. They've broken ground, and we're having a fight about the front door right now. You see, in our bay, there are 2 front doors. They both open like this. We're probably going to permanently lock one of them and just have one front door, because unless you're like bringing in a pallet of computers, you don't need 2 front doors. So, okay, great. There was this vestibule thing in front of it, and we said, well, we don't want that. It's taking up all this square footage that we don't need. It's just glass. Let's get rid of it. And then he's like, well, there's a 1/2 inch gap between the 2 front doors. Now, in my business brain, I'm thinking, put a piece of weather stripping on it. Solved. Apparently, they can't, or they don't want to. And so we said, well, then you got to take one of the doors out, and you got to frame it, put a window pane back in it. They sent us a bill to do that for $3,000 to take out a door and put in a pane of glass instead. And I know that these building facades are modular, literally they're like Lego pieces. I'm like, no, that doesn't mean I can do it. I've seen it done. Like $3,000, and they're the contractor. And I'm just like, yeah, can we get some weather stripping instead? So that's where we're at. We're doing front door stuff right now, and we are having an automated button opener installed that will open the door automatically. So if you're coming to the door with a big computer or you have a walker or something like that, you can't, you don't have a free hand to pull the door open. You can hit the button and the door will open for you. All righty. Dave and Trainer, good to see you. All righty. Good to see you, Nan. Deb likes Schrock Talk. I'm still with you. Good way to go. Hey, Kara's here. We've been talking about you, Kara. We're doing a podcast on Monday. It might be called Schrock Talk. I'm not sure. We need a name. So I'm asking people for name suggestions. But yeah, we're going to do a podcast on how businesses are going to reopen. You build the agenda. Kara made the agenda for the podcast. So I'm thinking we're going to do this Monday afternoon if that works for everybody else. So you might want to like the general area behind. I'm not saying you, Kara, but like, Annette's using her kitchen at the kitchen table, and there's like a corner behind her with a sliding glass door on one side. We might want to turn it. I don't know. We're going to use Zoom to record the podcast, and then we can clip it up into smaller sub segments and make articles for the website. Then we could air the whole podcast as a Facebook Live too. But Zoom actually will allow you to use green screening. So Kara, if you have a dark colored sheet, if you hang that up behind you, you can literally set the background to be like a beach. So it looks like you're in like a beach house. It's kind of funny. So I was playing with the backgrounds, but you have to have some kind of a solid color behind you. Of course, one that you're not wearing. Dark usually works better. So I don't know. We'll see what I rig up for me on Monday. Build your factory in Grand Island. Many good sites. Wow, look at this. So now I've got, okay, Kara, all I had to say was we're trying to buy computer parts and we have to buy them from China because there's no factories anywhere else in the world that make them. And now all of a sudden, I've got an investor who's willing to back on a factory. I've got guys selecting sites for us in Grand Island to put the factory up. Now we just need the intellectual property on the circuit boards and we're good to go. So we got to have do we have any electrical engineers among us that can build me some circuit boards? All right. Schrock Solutions. All right. Bizmate. Wow. Bizmate. I don't know. That could be misconstrued, Lori. I like it, but I get what you're going with it. I'm just like, Bizmate. This is like, what was I can't think of it. There was a commercial that, anyway, I won't go there. $3,000. What are you talking about, Kara? $3,000. Oh yeah, $3,000 to remove a door. And the button cost like $400. The handicap button was $400, and the rest of that was all taking a door out, putting in a vertical door stop for the other door to land against, and then filling it in with glass. Michael's very excited about door opener. We are too. Innovation, Creation, Business Technology Podcast. Huh. Well, Kara, they're suggesting them in real time. Kara should set up her green screen. We're going to need that on Monday. It'll be fun. All right. And Paul just got out of bed. Having a calm quarantine morning there, Paul, are we? All right. So, guys, this has been fun. It's an hour and 7 minutes in now. So I'm going to do last call for questions. If anybody has any other questions they want to ask, now is the time to pop them in over there, and I'll go ahead and answer them best I can. Then we're going to wrap it up and get on with the day here. So let's see. Questions? No questions? Okay. All right. So what's going on in the service center? We've got Safe Upgrade. For those of you who didn't hear during the show, Microsoft pushed it to May. So they're calling it the May update that's going to be released in 2004. Go figure that. So it's still 2004, which is the year and the month, 2020, month 4, which is April, but they started verbally calling it the May update today. So that probably tells us they're going to push it to May. So we have a little bit more time to get those Safe Upgrade subscriptions. And I really appreciate you picking those up, by the way. Make sure you get one for each computer you plan to upgrade, and make sure that you have to buy a new one for each upgrade. So the one that worked for you last fall will not work for this spring. The Ultimate Upgrade sale is going on at Schrock right now, where you can actually get up to $100 in trade for any old computer. We don't care what it is, if it works or not. We don't take any parts out of it to use in your computer. You're literally getting a brand new computer, and we're giving you a trade-in value for something old that you're handing over to us that's going to get recycled. So it's earth-friendly stuff, which is good. But you can see the Himalayas right now, right? So the Earth's getting a heyday out of this thing. But anyway, the ultimate upgrade sale is going on. So if your computer is a little worn out or being a little difficult to use to work from home, let us know. We can certainly help you out and take care of you with a new computer right now as well. Also, yes, Kara, if you need SEO, let us know. Kara's very excited about the SEO podcast. But what I'd like you to do, if you're a business owner and you're listening to this because you're interested in business related things right now, I'm going to give you the link again to facebook.com/Schrock Interactive. Make sure I type that right, facebook.com/Schrock Interactive. That is where we will be hosting the podcast. It will go up, Lord willing, at some point on Monday. Please don't expect something as polished as the radio show. It's going to be much like an AfterSchrock, except with more people and a time delay and a bunch of people who aren't used to being on a radio show. So it's going to be different, okay? So I'll try to herd the cats as best I can. But yeah, it's going to be different, and it's going to be good because we're going to get some perspectives from other people in their areas of expertise. So, Kara, you probably missed the first part of this, but we were talking earlier in the show here how businesses right now are cutting back on their terrestrial advertising because there's no product to put out. But right now, if you're not doing online advertising, literally anybody right now, everybody has backed off everything. So if you actually have the dry powder, if you have the capital to accelerate your online advertising right now is a golden opportunity where you will be able to take top of mind awareness from competitors, national competitors even, that you wouldn't have been able to touch before. And yeah, eventually they'll try to claw back from you. But right now you can, the whole thing is the whole point of our podcast that we're going to do on Monday is if you're a business owner, what can you do right now to have an explosive growth when we come out of quarantine? Because that's what you want to have to do. Or if you're right on the edge of maybe not knowing if your business is going to reopen or not, what tools are available to you? Do you know that Schrock Interactive finances websites over a 3-year period with no interest and no down payment? Yeah. Now, we don't finance everybody. We've had people come to us, I want the next Facebook. We're not going to build that. I want a bridal extravaganza where people can do their entire wedding in an old Kmart. We're not going to do that. That's not a good idea. If you're a dentist and your website is lacking, that's a good idea. We can do that for you. If you are, if you're a restaurant, these restaurants are trying to do curbside and they don't even have their menu on the website. Like, I'm trying to support you. I went to your website. The owner of the restaurant lives in my neighborhood. So I'm saying, you know what? I've never eaten at that restaurant before, but I'm going to try them. So I go to their website and there's no takeout menu. There's no pickup menu. How do I even know what I can buy from you? Nobody thought this through because right now business owners are focused on just surviving, right? So what we're saying is I've got a team of Schrock Interactive people that all they do is work for businesses. And they're just as idle as you are. Now they're working on our stuff right now. We're taking our own advice and we are accelerating hard. But we have capacity that we can help your business too. So these are resources that you can use that will make life better for you when you reopen. But if you don't know about them, and I can't do a whole show on the radio about how we'll help your website, your business's website, I could hear the collective dials turning off. It doesn't work. So we have to have a separate podcast about it. Oh, the financial advice, Richard. Okay, Richard. This financial advice is offered with no guarantees, explicit or implicit, that you will make, save, create, or even have your money when you're done doing it. Okay, but this is what Thor is doing with his money, okay? So, officially on the year, I am up. So, if past performance is not an indication of future results, invest wisely. But if you went to bonds when the AfterSchrock said go to government bonds, you missed a 40% drop in the market almost in some cases, 30% average, but 40% in some areas. If you started to get back in when the AfterSchrock said it's time to start legging in roughly 5% a week, you would be up right now. So here's the thing: mistakes that I have made. Small caps. I was like, wow, the 40% stocks, the ones that are down 40% are the smaller mid-size. Well, when I say a small cap, that's like a mid-sized business. That's like a restaurant chain, right? That's like Olive Garden, the company that owns Olive Garden and all the other restaurants. They're publicly traded. They're a small cap company. So I think it's Darden. I don't know. Anyway, the that company is hurting really bad right now. Their stock has been knocked 40%. But certainly when we come out of quarantine, everyone's going to want to go to a restaurant, right? So I'm like, I'm going to start buying into small caps. Well, then it starts to come out that maybe when we're released from quarantine, we're still going to have to be 6 feet apart. So now you're talking about taking two dining room tables and butting them up to each other so you can seat four people 6 feet apart, right? That's a lot of tables. That's a lot of room. That's a lot lower capacity in restaurants, and restaurants are going to have a tough time making money doing that. Wow, maybe small cap wasn't the place to be. That's actually been a drag. So I would not recommend small cap companies right now. They are the most attractive because they're so far down. You could make a lot of money. So if you didn't get out in time and you suffered some of that drop, you might be trying to get that money back quick. Small cap is not where to go. Large cap companies, which are going to include Amazon, Walmart, Microsoft. Those are the places that I'm at right now. That I lost some money in the small caps, and I said, okay, that's enough of that. I'm going into the large cap companies. I am still in bonds as well. I'm 50-50 right now. So half of my money is still in U.S. government treasuries. Half of my money is in large cap stocks, and I am officially up $800 on the year right now. So without giving away too much financial stuff about what the principles and all that were, we timed it right on. And again, I'm saying, guys, this is financial advice you should not follow. This is the antithesis of everything your financial advisor tells you to do. You don't time the market. You don't try to, you have to time it perfectly twice. You have to get out on top and get in on the bottom. And then you have to deal with all the emotional strife. You're making all these changes. And you'll hear a news report and you'll change something. But right now, the whole world changes every news cycle. So maybe we should change it every hour. Maybe right now, those rules are different too. That's all I'm saying. So there's my financial advice, Richard. That's what I've got for you. If you were looking for an individual stock pick, I apologize. I would sell Zoom, honestly, because Zoom was kind of the accidental beneficiary of this whole COVID thing. But there are other competitors that are coming up fast, that are structured for growth, that are backed by big money, that have better tech, that have more secure tech. They're going to be like Blue Gene, for example, was just acquired by Verizon. So again, that I would get out of Zoom. If you're looking for a sell Zoom. Get out on top. You all right? And then when they dive, you can buy back in later if you really want to. What was it? Microsoft got the Jedi contract. That's finalized, the U.S. government contract. So that's a real good one for Microsoft. If you have Microsoft, I'd hang on to that. All right. I'm working on ramping up our interactive website to really accentuate the importance of being on top. Yeah, that's going to be absolutely critical because if you're in a dominant position when everybody comes out of quarantine, the business windfall that you're going to get will have multiple effects. Number one, your business will get revenue that it sorely needs to pay back bills. Number two, and this might be Machiavellian of me, your competitors will not get that revenue. And in a long-term competitive environment, that's good news for your business. So that's the thing. Right now, everyone is thinking short-term. And this is what I'm saying. Everybody, all this stupid financial advice and stuff that I've been throwing out, guys, it's all counter-cyclical stuff. I'm just doing what Buffett does, right? So if everybody wants to sell, wait till they all sell and then buy. If everybody wants to buy, wait till they all buy and sell. I went to bonds before everybody freaked out and ran to bonds, so I made money on bonds. I got out of bonds, partially, when everyone is super scared about getting back into the economy. So, yeah, I took a few lumps in the early time. That's why I didn't just move 50% at once. I did like 5% every few days or every week until I got up to 50%. And then that's where I stopped because that was my risk tolerance. I don't, if we're in for a year, I don't want to be losing all my money, you know? So that's all this is. And it's the same thing with your business. Right now, business owners are freaked out trying to figure out how they're going to stay alive right now. Kara, there's a company that we talk about all the time. I say I have a friend, my wife's friend works at this company, and they have laid off like half their staff. And I used the wrong word. They have terminated half their staff, not furloughed, not laid off. They terminated them, and then they took their PPP loan. So they're trying to survive because they're in the ad business and nobody's buying ads. Nobody's doing anything. They didn't have anything for these people to do if they would have paid them. So they had to let them go. So right now we're hiring. There is a huge pool of available talent out there. If you're looking to upgrade your staff, now is the time to do it. If you're looking to add that one critical position that you never were able to find a good candidate for, there are tons of good candidates. Holy smokes, we got right before the radio show, we got an application named Terrence for a senior technician. Looks amazing on paper. Now, something doesn't always work out, but he looks amazing on paper. We're going to call him for an interview because it's time to add or upgrade or change people or move people into a position that's better suited for their skills and abilities right now while you have access to all of this, so that when we come out of this, our team at Schrock is going to be stronger than it was when we went in. When we come out of this, our web presence will be more dominant than when we went in. And as a result, when all these businesses are looking, when they finally get their feet under them again and they're looking for a service provider, we are going to be front and center, and our competitors might be gone. When I'm talking about this other company that we compete against in the web marketing arena, I'm not going to say names, but they have national contracts with national organizations that pay millions of dollars a year. And we're doing better than them right now. That's how much the world has changed. So if you're a business owner, you want to stay tuned for this one because your world is changing too. Can you trade in multiple computers and they have to work? You can only trade in one computer for each computer you're buying. That's a great question, Alex. So one computer trade in per computer you're buying. They don't have to work. You can take parts out of them. We have people, we don't care. We have one person trade in like literally a VTech kid's laptop, like those plastic ones that the kids beat on. We don't care. We don't do anything. We just recycle them. So we're not going to pull parts out of it to build your computer or anybody else's computer. Schrock's creative team. I like that. Schrock Biz Talk. Okay. No, a senior tech. No, Kara, I said add or upgrade. No, we got some people. So we have some people at Schrock that are doing jobs right now that they can do, that they're capable of. Brian, for example, he doesn't enjoy management, but Brian is an outstanding technician and he's an amazing data recovery engineer. So doesn't it make sense for me to have Brian completely focused in the data recovery lab and hire a new senior technician to fill his spot in the shop? See? Now we've got people where they belong. And that means we have more capacity in the data recovery lab, which means that after Kara gets done dominating the data recovery field while everyone is closed, I'll have the staff I need to deal with the demand. You see how the planning works here? So that's what we're going to tell other businesses how to do. All right, got to wrap it. My phone is buzzing. I'm thinking my wife is telling me to shut up already. All right, we'll talk to you all on tomorrow, on Monday, if you want to tune in on that. It's facebook.com/Schrock Interactive. If you want to go there now, click on like and follow, and that way when we go live, it'll pop up for you. Thanks a lot for joining us, guys. We appreciate it. We'll see you again next weekend.